Welcome back to Darkness Prevails Ghost Story in the evening broadcast of Stories of Late Night Today. In the series of stories written about Tet Holiday, we will meet again, Ms. New. You will send us a story titled The Village of Devils. Please invite everyone to follow from ancient times until now. People often say that heaven has always been kind to people, but in recent years, everywhere in the Han Dynasty, the crop failure season has lasted, people from the city to the countryside village. Whenever you go out on the street, everywhere you see scenes of people fighting, even for a piece of bread. They can break their heads and bleed. Hunger makes people lose their humanity. Killing and robbing happen everywhere. To survive, fathers sell their children, husbands sell their wives. As long as they have something to eat, they can do anything. When they get old, the evil side takes over the human side. Humanity in society is also somewhat lost. People think that in this day and age, everywhere is the same, but there is one place that is completely different. That is Bothach Village. Isolated deep in the mountains while everyone is struggling to get by and no longer paying attention to the day of victory, Bothach Village is peaceful, as if completely isolated from the outside world. Especially these days, the atmosphere is even more bustling because Tet is coming soon. From the beginning of the 12th lunar month, the atmosphere in the village has been bustling and busy, just like the years before the famine. The households in Sa village have sent the kitchen gods to heaven and started preparing to welcome the new year, such as cleaning the house, pasting red parallel sentences in the model house. Pigs, chickens, fires, cakes, village feet, all over the village. All the kitchens are flying up. The air is filled with warmth and prosperity. This year, the people of Bothach Village are even more excited and happy than previous years because in the past year, every family in the village had a bumper crop of rice, full of houses. The reason why Bothach Village can live such a prosperous life is all thanks to the fact that the village is located against the Bothach mountain range. On the mountain, there is a natural waterfall more than 10 meters high. All year round, the waterfall roars and never stops. The people here use bamboo pipes to dig small canals to bring water from the mountains down to the village. Therefore, even though the Han Dynasty outside has long-lasting cracked land everywhere, lacking water and unable to grow crops, leading to poor harvests, Bothach Village can still grow crops and harvest all 4 seasons. The village has been around for hundreds of years, through many generations from the time of our ancestors until now. The villagers have become accustomed to a self-sufficient lifestyle. They live in isolation, hidden deep in the mountains like an autonomous region that has no contact with the outside world. Perhaps that is why, during the years of continuous natural disasters, crop failures, and robberies everywhere, they were still able to live a peaceful and happy life. Although the village is located deep in the mountains, the population is not sparse. On the contrary, it is extremely crowded. Counting back and forth, there are nearly 1,000 households. These households are divided into 3 main families, Tran, Nguyen, and Din. According to Mr. and Mrs. Shua, the ancestors of these 3 families were the first people to open land on Bothach Mountain to establish a village several hundred years ago. Later, there were also people from other families who accidentally came here. This village then stayed to settle down and make a living, but the number was very small because of a large population, so Bothach Village was divided into 3 small villages, with the head of the Tran Nguyen Din clan as the village head. The village head was also elected from the heads of these 3 clans. Every year, they would take turns managing each village. Each village had its own ancestral temple to worship the ancestors of their clan. Although it was said that the 3 villages had 3 different surnames, the people of Bothach Village were very united and never saw any conflicts of interest. Also at the end of this year, Mrs. Hong's family in Tran Village married a wife for her son. Although Mrs. Hong was a widow raising her children alone, her husband, when he was alive, was the eldest branch in the Tran family tree. Therefore, the land was also more than other families. There was no shortage of food and property. This time, marrying a wife for Mao Mao, Mrs. Hong did a very grand job. Mao is over 30 this year. He already had a wife before. Unfortunately, the youngest daughter of Mao's wife had a tragic fate. She had just married into Mrs. Hong's family and passed away not long ago. It has been 5 years now that Mao has remarried. there is nothing to criticize. Anyway, Mao is still young, and when Oot Man was alive, Mao also treated her wholeheartedly and let her go until now, which can be considered as fulfilling the love and duty of her life. But there are still some people who, out of jealousy and anger, say things about her insinuating that she is a second wife and acting like a bachelor is not as good as the one before. When she married Oot Man, she didn't see how it was done in such a big way. People are truly heartless. No matter who said anything, Mrs. Hong's family didn't care. No matter who said too much, a wife cannot remarry. Even though her son had been married once, he could still marry. Having a beautiful young wife of equal social status, she did not make a big deal out of it. Should she cry to welcome the bride? Mao's new wife's name is Hugh, just like her name. She is both beautiful and virtuous, and is also the daughter of the village chief Nguyen. That's why everyone said that Mao was truly blessed for 3 generations. He not only did not despise him for having had a wife, but Mr. Kwong's family also gave him 500 of rice and a pair of buffaloes as a gift for the family. In a time when many people did not even have porridge to eat, 500 of rice and a pair of buffaloes were a fortune that people could not even dream of having. Year-end and New Year's Eve and also married the Golden Bride, so the lady held a big party to celebrate for 2 days. Not only that, she also invited the singing team in the village to her house to perform. Bothach Village, located at the foot of the mountain, has had the custom of worshiping the mountain god since ancient times. To serve the annual ceremonies, the village has a singing team. Occasionally, any family that has a wedding or any other happy occasion can hire the singing team to perform during the day after a full wedding meal. At night, the villagers, both young and old, all carry a stool in one hand and a palm leaf fan in the other, without prior arrangement, and go home together. The Tran family's churchyard was the only place spacious enough for the whole village to watch the opera. People in the neighboring 2 villages heard that there was a performance, and also took the opportunity to come and watch. Atmosphere was extremely bustling. In no time, the family's churchyard was packed with people. Some people even had to climb trees because there was not enough space to sit while waiting. Many people couldn't help but gather together to discuss. This time, Mrs. Hong's family is also playing big. It seems that they got a lot of money from Mr. Kwong's house, so they didn't play anymore. But what can we say? I still feel sorry for Hugh. She is clearly beautiful and a young girl. If she likes someone, she will go and like them. Aren't you wasting your time? Stop it, lady. Tell other people's family matters. They won't hear Mrs. Hong. She will be wronged everywhere. Now, everyone in this village knows Mrs. Hong's mouth. Saying Mrs. Hong is a loudspeaker is not good. If Mrs. Hong hears these words of theirs, she will definitely jump up and say that they are Ken, who is angry with her. In this village, the story of the children of the same family marrying each other has always been. Many of the benefits of this are to strengthen the relationship between the clans to avoid causing division. Although it is so, it must be the type of Mondang Ho Doi, and I have never seen a wedding where the groom's family is so far behind the bride's family by several alleys like that. So it is said that Mrs. Hong's family is not good at climbing high branches, but no matter what the whole village says, in Mrs. Hong's eyes, she still puts herself on par with Hugh's family. Hugh marrying into her family is a perfect match for her son, but the story of Hugh and Mao is really making people gossip. Because, with the girl's condition in this village, there are so many young men who would like to marry her, many more than Mao, but Hugh still insists on living and dying to marry a man with more than one wife. Although Bee's appearance is considered handsome and bright, no matter how beautiful her face is, it cannot be used to make food. Even if Hugh tries harder, Mr. Kwong and Mrs. Tam, her parents, will have to consider it. This person not only does not stop her, but also colludes to give the girl a dowry that makes everyone stunned. I don't know why I heard that little girl Hugh slept with that guy and got pregnant first. That's why Mr. Kwong's family had to get married right before Tet. They were afraid that after the year, her belly would swell up and she would be embarrassed in front of the neighbors. Really, didn't you guys notice that when the bride was brought in, little girl Hugh had to enter the house through the gate and step over the ladder? If there was no cure, then what was it? Everyone knew that Hugh went through the gate to enter Mrs. Hong's house. Because before the wedding, Mrs. Hong went to the village which to see the date. Good month good vuba said to avoid making Vong Ha Nuoi Song Mao sad and leading to dissatisfaction, so the new bride had to go in through the back door to sleep, meaning that even if Hugh were to become the daughter-in-law of Mrs. Hong's family, she would still respect her deceased wife, so no one thought about Hugh being cured before. Now, hearing that, people started to gossip to see if Hugh's stomach was bloated or not. It was also said that in Gwyn village, because of Hugh's wedding this time, a rumor arose. It was said that the family, Mrs. Hong, was targeted by Mr. Kwong's family's wealth. Seeing that Mr. Kwong only had Hugh as his child, she told Mao to use a talisman to make Hugh fall head over heels in love with him. Otherwise, with normal conditions and brains, why would she choose someone like you? After a while of gossiping, the singing team finally went on stage. Everyone immediately fell silent and watched attentively because the village singing team specialized in performing on the occasion of ceremonies, so they did not have to carry a troupe. They would not perform plays outside, but only plays about the legends of Ba Village. Thatch Tuan sings a story about a poor couple who had very strong feelings for each other. The husband studied hard all year round and finally became a mandarin. The wife held her child at home and waited for her husband. Vinqui Baitu. But before the husband could return, the foreign army invaded and slandered him. The new mandarin had just led an army to fight. Every day, the wife took her son to the highest mountain in the village and waited for her husband. One day, when the wife received the news that her husband had died in battle, she held her son and went to the top of the mountain and looked back. Far away on the border, crying for the mother and child turned into rocks. Their tears turned into a waterfall circle. A few months later, the husband returned safely and learned that his wife and child had passed away. He climbed to the top of the mountain, hugged the two rocks, and cried. The husband's tears merged into the circle. From then on, people could not see the husband anymore. They only saw on the top of the mountain 3 rocks that looked like 3 people hugging each other. That's when people named this mountain Ba Thatch. The waterfall on the mountain is called Fu Ti Waterfall when it comes to the part where the wife hugs her child and stands. On the mountaintop, crying for her husband, suddenly a cold wind blew from somewhere, causing the red heart lanterns hanging in the 4 corners of the communal house yard to be blown out. The space was plunged into a piece of darkness. Black as ink, only the faint figure of a woman standing in the middle of the stage could be seen, whispering, "I have vowed to marry you for 100 years, but now the times have separated us. With one turn of the head, the world and the living world are separated. I am alone in this temporary world. How can I live each day without my husband? It is as if I go down to Hoa Twin so that I can tell you about the broken red formation. I in the dim light, people saw Ms. Dow fall down, something warm splash around. The people sitting closest to the stage suddenly screamed, blood died, and the whole courtyard suddenly became chaotic. Never before had fresh blood flowed out. People discovered that the female singer was lying in the middle of the courtyard. Her neck was cut deeply, blood spurted from her neck like a waterfall. In no time, it spread all over the courtyard. People ran around in panic, trampling in a pool of blood, making the scene even more horrifying. That night, everyone in the village was in a trance. We're all so scared to death, especially Mrs. Hong's family. No one could be happy when their son's wedding party had someone commit suicide. The happy event ended in disaster. The deceased was also a member of the village singing team. No matter what, Mrs. Hong's family would be arrested and taken to explain to the council of dignitaries of the deceased village. This time, Lin was the daughter of Mrs. Tai in Din village. I don't know if it was a coincidence or not, but this daughter of Mrs. Tai was also a widow in the valley. Lin's husband died more than a year ago. I heard that she went to the mountain to cut down trees. The tree was bitten to death by a poisonous snake right after her husband died because she had not had any children yet. Mother-in-law did not want to raise another mouth in the house, so she sent Lin back to her mother's house. The Din people in the village saw that Lin's situation was pitiful, so they let her join the village singing team. Because the singing team served important ceremonies in the village, they also had a small salary. In addition, if they accepted to sing outside, there would be additional expenses, so the mother and daughter would have a little extra to cover their living expenses. After witnessing Lean's death, many people thought that she was too cruel. In return, the performance was so focused that it was like that. Only the patriarchs of the three villages did not think so. After knowing that Lean too cut his throat while performing Tuong, they gathered together and hurriedly went to the residence of the shaman, a highly respected female medium who was respected by the whole village. She was nearly 100 years old this year. For the people of Ba Thatch village, this was the person chosen by the god. They asked for the opinion of the shaman. She was old and both eyes were blind, but because she was well taken care of, her whole body was fine. Fleshy skin looked extremely healthy and flexible. When Mr. Kwong and two other village chiefs arrived, the shaman was offering incense to the god in his house. They did not dare to disturb him and stood waiting outside. Clearly, everyone was very anxious. After a while, the shaman was helped out by a female shaman. As soon as he saw her, before waiting for her to come closer, Mr. Kwong quickly spoke up and said that something had happened to the shaman. Someone in the singing team died while performing in the communal houseyard. The Tran family was Lean, the daughter of Mrs. Tai in that Ho Din village. Mr. Kwong was the village chief of the Nguyen family, but this year he also. Kim was elected as the village chief, so although this happened in Tran village, he was the one responsible for reporting it to the witch. She died and died. What are you guys worrying about? The witch sat down at the table and drank tea. Seeing the witch's attitude, Mr. Kwong and the others looked at each other and breathed a sigh of relief. The witch had great supernatural powers, and there was nothing she couldn't handle. Now she took this matter lightly, proving that Lean's death would not affect the whole village. So what should we do, witch? The witch's eyes were cloudy, looking at Mr. Kwong Tai, knowing that she was blind, but when she looked at Mr. Kwong, she still felt her scalp numb. So she did what she did many times. Did she have to teach you guys again? Her deep voice made people's hair stand on end. Mr. Kwong didn't dare stay any longer and quickly bowed and asked for permission to go home to deal with Lean's matter. The witch's cloudy eyes followed their figures until they could no longer see anyone. Then she slightly narrowed them. Everyone in this village knew that these eyes belonged to her. The reason she was blind was because she had an exchange with the gods when she was 20. Dreaming of meeting the mountain god that the villagers of Ba Thatch always worshiped, because the mountain god said that if the shaman was willing to become a worshiper of the god, he would give her power in return. She had to sacrifice her life and eyes as a sacrifice. The shaman agreed immediately without hesitation, but when she woke up, her eyes were really blind. From then on, the shaman had many more abilities that ordinary people could not have. She could see the future, could exorcise demons, and became a shaman. In the village, they worshipped and respected each other, but no one knew that a month ago, the eyes that had been blinded because the people had sacrificed them to the gods of the shaman suddenly regained their sight, even though they were only blurry, colorless images, but it still made a person who lived nearly 100 years like the shaman startled and startled. Because she did not know what the god's intentions were, he was talking about Lean's death. The reason the shaman could be so calm was because she knew that 2 days before the wedding, the shaman received a dream from the god. It was the ceremony for this time that the god chose after hearing the news of her son's death. She seemed to collapse but still tried to take care of her son's funeral. But that night when she was in Lean's coffin, she saw Mr. Kwong leading Mr. Bin, Mr. Tri, and a few young men in the village coming to the door. Seeing them, Mrs. Tai suddenly felt a chill down her spine, knowing for sure that something was wrong. Village chief, is something wrong with Lean's body? We will bring it into the mountain. This is her fortune and also the honor of her family. Mrs. T's whole body fell down. When she saw Lean's coffin being carried away, she came to her senses and quickly hugged the feet of Mr. Bin, the village chief of the Din family, and cried and begged the village chief, Sir, I only have her as my child. Please forgive her. Please, sir. Please, sir. Please, sir. Have mercy on her. What's the point of crying when you're chosen by the gods? It's her third life. Are you still talking too much? Or do you want to follow her forever?" Hearing this, Mrs. Ty gradually shrank back. She relaxed, not daring to say a word. She just sat there, watching the people carrying her child's body away. Late at night, from deep in the mountains came the sounds of roaring and howling, along with the sound of wild animals tearing flesh and chewing and swallowing. Strangely, that sound was transmitted clearly into every house and into the hands of every person. Even if they didn't want to, they had to listen. That night in Ba Thatch Village, no one dared to sleep. No one said a word to anyone, but they all understood clearly what was happening because they all knew the secret hidden deep within this village. The next day, as if by a tacit agreement, no one asked about what had happened. The people in Din Village still, acting as if they didn't know what was coming to pay their respects to Lean, even though everyone knew that the coffin that was buried was just an empty coffin. On the 7th day after Lean died, instead of happily preparing to celebrate Tet, on this day the atmosphere in Ba Thatch Village suddenly became strange. Salt and sticky rice were sprinkled in front of every house, especially Mrs. Hong's house. Even dog blood was smeared on the door. Mrs. Hong was mumbling while doing so, cursing her father. How dare he come here? I made him so that even a ghost couldn't do it. Every time Lean was mentioned, Mrs. Hong again gritted her teeth because of anger. She hated to death when not to die, but to die on her son's wedding day. This is no different than deliberately cursing Mrs. Tam's house. Vi Mrs. Hong thought that this year Tet, if you get married when relatives and aunts come, Tet will definitely receive a lot of lucky money called congratulating the young couple. The result is just because of Lean's death that caused chaos in the village early, then no one will dare to come to her house. And after Tet Hugh was cooking in the kitchen, saw Mrs. Hong cursing while working, then left. Go out and take the bucket of black dog blood and say to Mrs. Thoy, "Mom, go in and rest. Leave it there. I'll do it. I'll cook the rice." When Mrs. Hong saw Hugh accept the job, she didn't bother being polite and went straight into the house to drink water. While drinking, she loudly shouted out to the yard, "Sweep carefully. Don't miss any spots, or else when she comes back tonight, she'll pull your eyebrows. Don't blame Hugh." This said, then dipped the broom in the bucket of black dog blood and swept it up to the door. In no time, the door was stained bright red with blood, drop by drop, falling to the ground. Seeing this scene, she was shocked. The memory of the pool of blood in the communal house yard along with Lean's body made Hugh's whole body cold. Even her hand holding the broom shook, but very quickly her eyes drooped down. A ray of blood flashed through her eyes. Ba Thatch Village has a custom from ancient times until now that whenever a family has a death, on the 7th day after the burial, the relatives will place a tray of ancient relics in the yard, light an oil lamp, then burn votive paper money to call the soul of the deceased to come back for a last meal, also considered as a farewell to the relatives in Duong Van, so that their souls can rest in peace. On this day, only the house with the deceased is allowed to light the lamp, while all the other houses in the village must spread salt and sticky rice in front of the gate to prevent the soul from accidentally entering the wrong place on the way home. The reason why Mrs. Hong not only sprinkled sticky rice and salt but also had to sweep dog blood in front of the door is because Lean died on the wedding day of her son's mother. In folklore, there is a type of demon called the joyful demon. That is, the souls of those who die at weddings will often cling to them and not let go. For that family, so the horse room spirit Lean, after returning home, the old lady refused to go down to the underworld but followed the old lady Hong's house. So the witch told Mrs. Hong to sweep dog blood on the door. Dog blood can prevent evil spirits. After entering the house from before until now, whatever the witch said, the people of Ba Thatch Village, no one did not listen. Even Mrs. Hong before never let anyone in her eyes and did not dare to disobey. The witch again talked about Hugh not knowing if it was because of Lean's death or not, but since becoming a daughter-in-law until now, Mrs. Hong always felt, "I saw something strange about Hugh." Before, when Hugh was still pursuing Mao, she always hedged first. After that, she tried to please Mao, then turned to please Mrs. Tam. She was always submissive and humble, making Mrs. Hong extremely satisfied. But after working for a few days, Hugh's attitude was completely different from before. A newlywed couple should be very close to each other, but now Hugh said that it was her period, so she didn't hesitate to sleep in the same room with her husband. Her eyes looking at Mao became extremely cold towards Mrs. Hong, although she still maintained her duty as a good daughter-in-law and listened. But the words were not as pleasing as before. Last night, Mrs. Hong got up to go to the bathroom, and T stood in front of the bed and stared at her strangely. When Mrs. Hong called, Hugh seemed to wake up and said she was sleepwalking. On the night of the 23rd of the 12th lunar month, at 7 p.m., the entire Ba Thatch village was immersed in a quiet black curtain. Looking down from the high mountain, there was only a single ray of light coming from the end of Din village. That was Mrs. Ty's house. In front of Mrs. Ty's yard, she placed an offering tray on the tray. There was a bowl of rice, a bowl of salt, a bowl of rice, and a chicken. In just a few days, Mrs. Ty's whole body seemed to have aged 10 years. Her eyes were swollen from crying so much that she couldn't open them. Her hair had turned more than half gray. Mrs. Ty knelt in the yard, holding 3 incense sticks. Her mouth kept muttering, "Oh, my child, you'll live a miserable life and die in heaven. Where are you? Come back here and eat with me. Eat your fill and then reincarnate in the next life. Don't live a miserable life like this anymore." Mrs. Ty stuck the incense sticks into the bowl of rice, rubbed her hands together, and looked toward the high mountains. She muttered something indistinctly. Suddenly, Mrs. Ty's whole body trembled. Raindrops fell from the sky and dripped onto the offering tray. The oil lamp and incense on the table were extinguished by the rain. Mrs. Ty's eyes were white as she looked at the blood-red raindrops that were continuously pouring down. In no time, her yard was flooded. The village looked like a pool of blood, just like the Dalene's blood flowed all over the Tran family's communal house yard in the village. Because of Lean's 7-day temptation, every house turned off the lights and went to bed early. Therefore, no one knew anything about this rain of blood except Mrs. Ty. Only the witch was still awake. By the window looking towards the mountain top through the curtain of blood rain, her fake white pupils were dyed red, looking extremely eerie. The next morning, when the witch was performing a ceremony for the mountain god at her house, Mr. Kwong ran over, panting heavily. He said worriedly that the witch had something big happen to her. His voice trembled intermittently, his face pale. The bloody rain last night in the village, except for Mrs. Ty and the witch, no one knew that it had stopped until almost morning. The water also seeped away very quickly, as if everything was covered in blood. The land was completely drained. Not even a single puddle of water was left. But the waterfall on the mountain, the main source of water for the whole village, had an accident because of this rain. When Mr. Kwong helped the witch to the scene, he was shocked. The entire waterfall was dyed red. The water pouring down from the waterfall into the stream looked as if blood was gushing out, making people shiver. What should the witch do? Not only Fu the waterfall, but all the crops in the village have died. What should we do now? This waterfall is the source of life for the whole village. If it doesn't come back, what should we do? Normally, this village of more than 1,000 households would not survive. You guys get ready to go. Tonight, we will make a sacrifice to the mountain god. Is this possible? Mr. Kwong was speechless and could not continue the following words. But she still heard the meaning in that sentence. She turned her cloudy eyes towards Mr. Kwong, making his scalp numb. She told him to stop talking and not let his mouth harm his body. Everything in this village is decided by the mountain god, whether it is a disaster or a blessing. Someone like him cannot interfere. Mr. Kwong's whole body trembled and his face bowed roar down, not daring to say another word, nor daring to look at the story of how in one night Fu the waterfall turned into a waterfall of blood, making the whole village of Thatch extremely happy. From the time they were born until now, no one had ever seen such a terrifying scene. When they learned that the shaman would perform a ceremony to worship the gods, they became even more uneasy because they thought that this was because the mountain god was angry and wanted to punish the whole village. The more afraid they were, the more they couldn't figure out what this village had done to make the mountain god so angry. Everything that the mountain god had told them to do. Didn't they all follow it, or what? Why are they being punished like this now? Mr. Kwong and two other village chiefs hurriedly prepared a sacrifice. They set up an altar at the mountain god temple, located in the middle of the village. Black flags were hung in all four directions. In the middle of the flag, there seemed to be three human-shaped rocks standing next to each other, symbolizing Bothach Mountain. The offering to the mountain god was different from the previous times. This time, the shaman ordered them to prepare a pair of white buffaloes. Luckily, in Gwyn Village, there was a Mr. Kin's family raising a pair of white buffaloes. They were afraid they wouldn't be able to find them. Then the ceremony cannot be performed so that the ceremony can take place solemnly and most sacredly according to the customs passed down from the ancestors. The person in charge of the ceremony must sit on a palanquin carried by female mediums, his feet not allowed to touch the ground until reaching the temple of the female shaman, sitting on a palanquin, wearing a black ceremonial dress on his body, wearing countless silver bracelets. In the middle of the forehead there are 3 red dots drawn. With the blood of the female shaman's fingertips, when the female shaman appeared, the atmosphere in the temple suddenly became silent as a sheet of paper. Mr. Kwong carried a golden basin and stood in front of the door of the high temple. The village chief then carried a buffalo head when he reached the threshold of the temple. For young women, lower the bamboo chair. The witch stepped down from the chair and went into the temple. Mr. Kwong and 2 other people also entered to follow the ceremony to worship the gods. Not everyone could watch. Only people with high positions in the village like Mr. Kwong could participate, while the villagers could only stand outside and watch. Therefore, they had no idea what was happening inside. Inside the shrine, the witch went to an altar that was clearly used for worship. The mountain god, but there was no incense burner on top. The altar was cold and empty. There was only one red stone, about the size of a rice bowl, with an extremely strange shape. On the surface of the stone, there were countless lines. From afar, they looked like cracks. Up close, they looked like blood vessels emerging. 2 white buffalo heads were placed neatly on either side of the stone. The witch dipped her hands into the golden bronze basin that Mr. Kwong was holding. Inside was the blood of 2 white buffaloes that had just been beheaded for the ceremony. The witch used her bloody hands to rub it on. The rock rubbed its mouth and mumbled something that even Mr. Kwong and the others couldn't understand even if they heard it. Each layer of blood that the witch used her hand to rub on the rock seemed to have life. It then glowed. It absorbed all the blood into it. In no time, a basin of blood was sucked dry. Seeing that the mountain god had accepted the offering, Mr. Kwong looked at the 2 village chiefs, but before they could breathe a sigh of relief, the witch suddenly let out a miserable scream and fell down. What happened to the witch? Several people were frightened and rushed over to help the witch. But before he could touch it, he was scared to death by the sight before him. Tran stood there. The witch's 2 hands were stained red with fresh blood. At this moment, they were slowly rotting in a strange way. Even with the naked eye, one could see the flesh on the palms of her hands starting to ulcerate as if something was gnawing at them. It spread rapidly throughout her hands and gradually moved up her arms. The witch's pupils, which were originally cloudy because of her blindness, had turned red at some point. Something was wriggling in her pupils as if it wanted to bore through her eyes. That thing crawled out and slowly ran down her face. Underneath her wrinkled skin, it was as if hundreds of worms were crawling around. In no time, they had crawled all over her body and started gnawing at her flesh and blood from the inside out. Her skin was gradually corroded. Countless round holes appeared, the size of the tip of her little finger. From those holes, countless bloodworms could be seen sticking their heads out. Her eyes rolled back. Her whole body kept rolling on the ground in pain, making her face even more twisted and demonic. Her mouth was mumbling and reaching out to Mr. Kwong wanted to say something, but Mr. Kwong and the others were scared to death by her appearance, madly smashing the temple door and running out while screaming. The villagers who were waiting outside the temple, when they heard the screams of a ghost, were startled. Before they could run in, they saw Mr. Kwong and two others rushing out with pale faces in the direction of these people. They saw the witch crawling on the floor, reaching for the door. Her eyes were bloodshot, her face was ulcerated, and her mouth was open as if she wanted to. What did she say? But from her mouth black blood kept flowing out. The people of Thatch Village were scared by this scene. Everyone ran away. In panic, the witch struggled with the approaching death. Then suddenly her eyes widened, staring at the thing that had just stepped out of the temple standing next to her. The witch didn't care. Even though her breathing was low, she still embroidered, though. Question: why? Have worshipped you for so long. Why you? Because now I don't need a card like you anymore. All of you will be my food. The voice was hoarse in the dark, echoing throughout the village, scaring the children into crying out in fear. The witch finally collapsed and died right on the threshold of the temple, her eyes filled with fear as she looked toward the yard. The thing was standing in the middle of the temple yard, its entire body covered in a layer of slimy slime, as if flesh and blood were mixed together. Its two eye sockets were as black as pitch. Its mouth was wide with sharp teeth. It looked more like a monster than a demon, because it had a form that could be seen with the naked eye. It could be touched. The monster stood in the middle of the yard, raised its head, and looked toward the mountain it was on, opened its mouth and let out a terrifying cry as if calling something. The call of the demon echoed everywhere. Birds and animals were frightened and cried out in succession, then scattered as if fleeing from the top of the mountain. Countless black shadows, like wild beasts, rushed towards Thatch Village. In no time, they had covered the entire village. They seemed to sense the smell of fresh blood and flesh, howling madly. Then, as if receiving an order, they immediately dispersed and scattered everywhere. Thatch Village was now covered in darkness and extreme fear. Every house was locked and bolted. The whole family hugged each other and cowered, not even daring to breathe loudly. The children were gagged by adults. Their cries were choked in their poor, young throats. Outside the village, monsters were sniffing at the smell of flesh and blood. They were like wild animals rushing into the house. The sound of the door being broken down. The sound of a crow's nest rang out, along with the sound of flesh being torn and chewed, creating a haunting, deathly melody in the dark night. Soon, Thatch Village was massacred by monsters, dyed red with blood. Everywhere until the sound of the chicken and girl was heard, the monsters poured into the deep mountains. Thatch Village was devastated after only one night. Nearly 1,000 households now had less than 200 households left, especially Din Village near the mountain. There were no survivors. Everywhere was flesh and blood, along with pieces of bones torn by worms. In the lucky houses that survived the massacre, there were also the houses of Mrs. Hong and Mr. Kwong, the three clan leaders. Now only Mr. Kwong remained. Therefore, all the survivors came to his yard, crying and afraid. What should we do? What's wrong, Chief? Say something quickly. Someone started cursing. It's all your fault. If you guys didn't worship that thing, then how did it turn out like this, right? Quickly, give back my wife's life. Come here, give back my child's life. Quickly give it back. The living people who lost their loved ones all rushed towards Mr. Kwong. Some grabbed his shirt, some grabbed his hair, all of them resentful towards him. Mr. Kwong was torn apart by people. His blood was torn. He got mad and threw the whole group away. He grabbed a hoe in the yard and raised it towards the crowd. People then shouted, "Fuck you guys. You've been eating well for the past few years." Why didn't anyone say anything? Now that something happened, you put all the blame on me. Do you think that thing will forgive you? You lived happily with their flesh and blood, but now it eats your flesh and blood. This is the retribution that you all knew in advance but still accepted the trade. What are you complaining about now? It's my turn. Everyone, don't run away. Mr. Kwong hit the secret spot. Everyone fell silent. No one dared to open it. Mr. Kwong was right. No one in this village is innocent. No matter how much they deceive themselves, they all know in their hearts that the thing they worship is not a god but an evil spirit or a devil, but they still worship it to be prosperous and warm. Last night, Mr. Kwong almost died. If it weren't for Mrs. Tam Lu, she would have hugged that monster and rushed out into the yard, leaving him in the house and closing the door tightly. Perhaps by now, he would have become a piece of meat in the monster's stomach. Even now, in the yard, there were a few pieces of Mrs. Tam's phoenix flesh that were trampled by that group of people. Perhaps because of witnessing that terrible scene, Mr. Kwong now seemed to have gone crazy. His eyes were bloodshot. His mind was unclear. He laughed and muttered, "Retribution is retribution. They will come again. They will kill this place. They will kill this place." Hugh saw Mr. Kwong go crazy, but her face still had no emotion. She still stood still in the crowd next to Mrs. Hong. Mrs. Mao had no intention of speaking up to help or taking care of Mr. Kwong. They didn't even respond. What about Mrs. Tam? Even though they were her parents, Mr. Kwong's mind was no longer normal. Seeing him as crazy, the crowd couldn't do anything but disperse. Hugh also left with the crowd without turning back to look, even just once. Mrs. Hong and Mrs. Mao looked at each other. They kept feeling that Hugh was very strange. Was there any child who saw their parents like that and didn't care at all, as if Mr. Kwong wasn't their father? Before, the whole village of Ba Thatch knew that Mr. Kwong loved his daughter like Tran Bao. Hugh wanted whatever she wanted, even if it was marrying a man like Mao. He also agreed to let her and gave her a dowry, but now Hugh's attitude when looking at Mr. Kwong made Mrs. Hong and her mother unable to understand. This morning, when they left the house and saw the scene of blood and rotten flesh all over the village, everyone was so scared that their faces turned pale. Even men like Mao couldn't stand it and vomited several times. However, Mrs. Hong saw Hugh's expression unchanged, as if this bloody scene was nothing in her eyes. The more she thought about it, the more she couldn't understand why Mrs. Hong felt so scared and unconsciously walked away. A day passed. The survivors in Ba Thatch village were all listless. They were scared and hid in their houses. Even though the bodies of their loved ones had been torn apart by those monsters and were left on the street and in the yard, no one dared to clean up or bury them. However, there were also some people who saw that all the dead were not only not sympathetic but also wanted to steal things. Leading among them were Mrs. Hong and her daughter. Mrs. Hong and Mao went around the neighborhood, and whenever there was no one left in a house, they ignored whether there were any bodies inside or not and went to look. Waiting everywhere from money, gold to food, taking everything without leaving anything behind. Is it strange that my mother did that? What if someone saw it? Even though I was a young man with broad shoulders and strength, although I was usually stingy and drunk, I had never done something like this before. And then there was stealing from a dead person. You guys made me shiver like I had malaria. On the contrary, Mrs. Hong Kong was not afraid of those disgusting things, but she also laughed happily. You're stupid. You're relying on me. If my child doesn't take it, someone else will come and take it. It's just that right now those people are still shocked and haven't had time to recover, but thinking about this pile of money falling from the sky, they won't easily let it go. Mrs. Hong was right. Many people were scared, so they didn't react in time. When they saw the actions of Mrs. Hong and her daughter, everyone woke up and then pulled the whole family together to collect it. At night, after carefully locking the door, Mrs. Hong sat in the living room, happily counting the money and gold that she and her daughter had collected today. Seeing the greed in the eyes of Mrs. Hong and her daughter, Mrs. Hugh extremely hated the things of the family. The dead that she dared to take, not afraid that they would turn into evil spirits and return. Looking for Mrs. Hill again, why was Mrs. Hong startled by Hugh's cold voice? See, nowadays the mother and daughter were busy raking in the dead man's property, so they had no time to pay attention to the girl. Now, hearing her speak in a sarcastic tone, Mrs. Hong was irritated and turned around and said, "What kind of talk is that?" She was about to curse Hugh with some harsh words when Mrs. Hong's throat seemed to choke up. She stared at Hugh's face. Her whole body stiffened and sweat poured out. Like a golden shower on tea also fell all over the ground, making a clanging sound. Na and Mao also stiffened, their eyes wide open in horror as if they saw a ghost. Everyone was shaking, stuttering, unable to speak, their teeth chattering, making them stand in pairs. Hugh looked at the mother and daughter of Mrs. Hong, smiled strangely, then walked towards them. The closer she got, the more the face magnified in front of the mother and daughter. Now it was no longer the face of the gentle daughter-in-law, but the face of Oot Man, Mao's ex-wife. UDC, come here. Mao was shocked. Vu took the scissors on the table and pointed. You see, Man saw the frightened appearance of that mother and daughter, shaking the trap. Oot Man raised her head and laughed loudly. This mother and daughter weren't even afraid of monsters, but they were afraid of her. This story must be told about in years ago. You see, Man was an orphan and was not a member of the three great families in Titch. She had no clan or family to rely on for her life. You see, Man lived a very difficult and miserable life. Even so, Uman always maintained her morality and was a kind and honest girl. One time, she went up the mountain to pick beetle nuts and taught UC Man to save Mao for being bitten by a poisonous snake thanks to UC Man. Mao had just saved a life. She had no intention of saving someone, but a few days later, Mrs. Hong brought meat and eggs to thank Mao. At this time, she also expressed her intention to take care of Oot Man for the rest of her life to repay her for saving her life. At that time, No thought that God had mercy on her and gave her a good relationship. She also thought that in the end, she would have someone to rely on. Mrs. Hong, although she did not have a grand wedding, still completed all the wedding procedures to bring Oot Man home. It was only on the wedding night that she discovered that everything was fake. There was no gratitude. Here, they wanted to trick her and wanted to sacrifice her to the mountain god. As for why they chose her, it was all because of the words of the shaman. Last year, the shaman had cast a fortune-telling spell. She said that disaster was about to come to this village. At that time, everywhere there would be Han people, the land would be dry. The whole village would be exposed to the dry fields. No one would survive. Natural disasters were originally sent down by the heavens. However, because their village had wholeheartedly worshipped her for so many years, the benevolent mountain god showed them a way to live, which was to sacrifice a girl. Born in the lunar hour, lunar day, lunar month, and lunar year, and unfortunately, man is a person with a purely negative destiny. Even so, the mountain god also clearly specified that the person chosen to be sacrificed must be someone from the three big families in the village, because UC Man is not a member of the family. So when he learned about UC Man saving Mao, Mr. Kwong and the others came up with a plan to marry Oot Man. Once he married into Mrs. Hong's family, UC Man would also be considered a member of the Tran family. That night, Man was bequeathed. Mrs. Hong's mother and daughter personally brought him into the mountain. According to the witch's instructions, Mrs. Hong and her mother left Oot Man at the foot of Fu the waterfall and hurriedly left, but before they could go far, they heard her screams in resentment. "I will definitely return. I will make all of you pay." Her voice became weaker and weaker. In the end, all that remained was a whisper, along with the sound as if something was chewing and swallowing. Mrs. Hong and her mother did not dare to stop, but ran straight down the mountain. From then on, no one in Ba Thatch village told anyone. But everyone. They all clearly understand what they worship. It's just that they don't have any pity or fear. They just need to have something that can help the whole village. They live a rich and prosperous life, so whether it's a god or something else doesn't matter. The witch always says that the evil thing is the mountain god that she worships every day. But in fact, it's not a god but a demon. The witch doesn't know where it comes from. She only knows that when she was 20 years old, her husband went to Don Shui Mountain, but Mai slipped and fell down Fu the waterfall and died. She was heartbroken when she found her husband's body. The disease arose on the surface of the water in his hand. He held tightly a strangely shaped stone. No matter what he tried, he could not remove it. The night her husband died, the witch dreamed of someone knocking on her door. She could not see it, but that thing claimed to be the mountain god, and she was the one it chose. That thing required her to worship that stone. It would give her the power to ward off demons and see the future. The witch wanted to be respected, so she did not hesitate to make a deal with it. She would spend the rest of her life worshipping it, and also gave it her eyes, without knowing that it was all just a trick of the devil. At first, the devil was just a formless resentment that could exist thanks to clinging to Hondap. However, after the whole village saw him as a god and worshipped him, not incense smoke. Gradually, he relied on this. Along with sucking a little bit of yang energy from people, he gathered incense to form a ghost. Even so, for the devil, that was still not enough. He wanted more. 5 years ago, when the opportunity came, he took advantage of the witch to let her see the prophecy and forced them to sacrifice living people for her. From then on, the girls in the village, as long as there was a bit of een in their fate, whether they were born on a een day or at a een hour, will be chosen by the witch. Under the pressure of the village chief and the people in the clan, along with the girls' own relatives, if they did not voluntarily sacrifice themselves, they will be captured and thrown into the waterfall for the so-called mountain god deed. Over the past 10 years, who knows how many people have become its food. Let's talk about the recent case of Lean after. Her husband died and she returned to her mother's house, thinking that she could live in peace. Unexpectedly, the village chieftain came and said that the mountain god had chosen her. She told her to voluntarily go up the mountain. In this village, everyone knew what that meant. At first, Lean refused to go, but they used the life of the evil spirit to force her to know that she could not escape her fate. She also knew that everyone in this village was like a demon. No one would have mercy or save her. That's why she committed suicide in front of them. She wanted them to know. They were the murderers who wanted them to be afraid and regretful. Only Lean did not expect that after she died, her body would still be thrown to the devil by those cruel people. As for the devil, by constantly eating human flesh and blood, it gradually formed its own flesh and blood. After eating Lean, it lay in a cave next to Fu the waterfall, wrapped in a flesh cocoon, waiting for him to tear the cocoon and become a human. At that time, it would have a part of the immortal body, and with the power of the devil, it would not be able, still afraid of any of this. But the demon could not have expected that when it first ate the flesh and blood of a human Ootman, the overwhelming resentment of Ootman before he died had stuck to it like a hidden parasite. The stronger it became, the stronger man's resentment became until it was in the incubation period and was devoured by Ootman crazily. Ootman became the first resentment that could regenerate into a human form on the third night after Lean died while no one knew. Ootman had eaten Hugh, and then used Hugh's form to stay in the house. Mrs. Hong wanted revenge. Of course, Man not only wanted the lives of Mrs. Hong and her children, but she also wanted everyone in this village to die. Not a single one of them was innocent. You see, Man could see that everywhere in this village, resentment was rising. The shapeless monsters out there were Ootman's amalgamation of the resentment of countless people who had been forced to death by this village. When they were alive, they were torn apart by evil spirits, and now they craved each other's flesh and blood. At this moment, Man smiled strangely. Looking at Mrs. Hong. Hong, were you afraid of? Yesterday when you saw those monsters, you weren't that scared, right? What are you? You're dead. How could you enter my house? Since Ootman died, Mrs. Hong went to find a witch to ask for a spell to exorcise the demon. She also used Ootman's hair and fingernails to bury in the yard. According to the witch, even if Ootman turned into a demon, he wouldn't be able to enter her house. Don't you see? I'm a flesh and blood person, your daughter-in-law, and we got married properly before. How come I've forgotten after only a few days? It's impossible to know clearly what the witch did. Talking about her, up until now, you still believe that old woman's words? She's so powerful. How could she have died first? Surely you don't know that I killed that old woman. Hundreds of thousands of maggots drilled holes from her bone marrow, drilled out and ate all her flesh and blood. Then Mrs. Hong and her mother were so scared by Ootman's words that they couldn't stand anymore and fell to the ground, their faces pale like a corpse. Their mouths trembled and they muttered, "Come here, come here." At this moment, from outside, came a howl that sounded like a wolf calling. Then they saw black shadows with twisted postures passing by the window. Screams rang out, blood spurted, the sound of flesh being torn, along with the sound of chewing on things. This time no one could escape. Mr. Kwong was right. For so many years you have lived on our flesh and blood. It's time to return our flesh and blood to us. As soon as Yu Si Man finished speaking, he used a wolf-like posture to pounce on Mao. Before she could react, blood splattered everywhere. Mao's neck was bitten off by Yu Man, whose hand was cut off. Sharp nails emerged, grabbing Mao's head and jerking it flat out and threw it on the floor, its head rolling right next to Mrs. Hong's hand. Her eyes widened as if she was about to faint. Yu Si Man looked at Mrs. Hong lying face down on the ground, from her pants flowing a yellow liquid. Her mouth kept begging, "Please kill me, please kill me. That's them forcing me to stop." Before she could finish, Yu Man's hand and sharp nails had already stabbed straight into her stomach. Mrs. Hong screamed in pain. All her intestines were crushed and pulled out. Mrs. Hong was so scared that her 2 legs were torn into 4 pieces. Yu Si Man grabbed Mrs. Hong's upper body and threw it out while she was still conscious. Mrs. Hong saw herself being torn apart by a group of monsters. In the end, not even a piece of flesh or a piece of bone remained. That night, all the fish in Ba Thatch village were killed by those monsters. When the sky was bright, everyone had disappeared. Yu Si Man also lost his nerve. 49 days later, a group of people came out from the deep mountains. They were all girls around 18 years old, not a single man. The leader of the group was none other than Yu Man. They went down to Ba Thatch village. No one said a word to anyone. Together, they cleaned up from beginning to end, turning it back into a normal village like before. Then they demolished the temple and the ancestral hall of the 3 clans and stayed in the village to live. Only from then on, every time the 23rd of the lunar month came, they did not send the kitchen god to heaven like other places. Instead, they brought oil lamps and went deep into the mountains to prepare offerings as if to commemorate themselves. A prosperous and crowded village. The fortune was wiped out and became a shelter. The devil is also because of human greed and selfishness that all tech comes and everyone is busy worrying. I hope that we will all have smooth and happy things. I hope that everyone will maintain their goodness and conscience. Don't do anything against morality because of your own selfishness. Let's prepare to welcome a warm and peaceful Tet together. So the listeners have just finished listening to The Village of the Devil, a composition by Ms. New. Hello, bye. See you again in the next works. Wish you all a good night.